Welcome to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Joyous conversations about what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about our one reality. You have nothing to fear. You are eternal and you are perfectly loved. Knowing the truth changes everything. Now, here's Roberta.
Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm so glad you're with us today. I've learned by now that it's our wonderful guests who really keep many people tuning in, and I'm actually delighted about that. I've made so many interesting friends. But of course, a lot of our regular Seek Reality guests are doing just that. They're seeking reality. They're people like Craig Hogan, Sandra Champlain. They're seeking the truth about the greater reality and working in the field of afterlife education, and we love them. Or they're widowers, for example. We're going to be talking over the next 2 weeks with two widowers, Ward Barkefer, who's been here before, and Stephen Simon. Their wives have transitioned, but they're still in close communication with them even many years later. So we have all kinds of guests that are related to the afterlife. But, there are other ways to seek reality, and every one of us is in a slightly different place in our lives. So sometimes a guest will strike me as someone you might want to know just because that guest has kind of figured life out. It's going to be harder for you to grow spiritually if you're struggling with trying to get basic living right. And even if you aren't quite doing that, I find it lovely and inspiring to hear the stories of people who have overcome adverse early lives and have become successful and who now want to share what they've learned with you. Our guest today is actually one of those people who she kind of has touched my heart. This woman came from not just a broken home, basically a shattered home. She finally had to leave home when she was 17. She's on the street. She's shoplifting. She's a hippie. It's the 70s. She has a child out of wedlock. Then she meets another hippie. They end up getting married. And so they're a down and out couple. They end up with 6 children. And all the while, she was trying to figure life out. She always knew she was destined to do big things. She just didn't know how. And this woman has made such a success of her life and of her marriage. She's triumphed over so many things. I think she's an inspiration, and I just want you to get to know her as I have gotten to know her through reading. I read only the first half of her book because I had to actually read it carefully. And so she'll be back with us again. But meanwhile, here she is today, Stirling Fernandez. Sherry was pursuing inner fortitude. There's so many things she talks about. It's like, how can I make myself perfect? She was pursuing inner fortitude, wisdom, ways to triumph over fears and bad habits. What she saw as resistance that held back her progress toward infinite potential. And meanwhile, her husband Ken started a construction supply company, and he became pretty successful. So Sherry launched Fitmania, which is a fast-growing boutique fitness and personal development business that let her guide clients toward mastery over their lives too, so they could meet or exceed their goals and dreams. And she ended up liking the coaching work a whole lot more even than she liked helping people to do well physically. So she's turned her full attention to that. And she wants to, she talks about each of these in her book. She wants to focus on the physical, spiritual, educational, motivational, vocational, financial, lifestyle, character, and relationship aspects of our lives. And the result in 2021 has been her great little personal development book. I think it's a terrific book. It's called Life Mastery, Personal Progression Toward an Infinite Potential. It's basically a day-to-day, if you're serious about your life and making the most of it, this is the book for you, frankly. The trouble is, everybody is living life as an amateur. We don't know how to do it. I used to say when I was raising my children, it's too bad they make you keep the first batch, because that was my learner batch. But then it turns out that's the only batch I get. That's the way life is. And so what this woman has done is to take the time to go back, figure out how she did it right, how Ken did it right. 6 children, for heaven's sake. And she has written a book to show you step by step how you can do it too. She says anyone can do it. Sherry, welcome. I am so glad to have you with us today. Can't wait to learn more from you.
Thank you, Roberta. Thank you for the nice build-up too. I hope I can live.
I think you can live up to it. No, I read a lot of books, and I read a lot of self-help books, considering them as books to talk about on Seek Reality. But my standards are pretty high. Many of them are too new agey. I mean, working with your chakras. I've had a few of those, but for Westerners, that leaves them cold. I mean, what's a chakra? Eventually, people will know. People don't mostly know today, but you speak to Westerners exactly where they are. And I just can't get over it. And I told Sherry before we started, I think that the biggest success of her life is the fact that she has a wonderful marriage after 44 years. Too few people understand the importance of sticking together. I mean, my husband and I made a deal. The night that we were on the plane after our wedding, we made a deal. Each of us promised not to be the one who would break up the marriage. And there were times when if I hadn't made that promise, believe me, I would have paid you to take him. But in the end, I'm so happy I didn't. And so we'll talk about that too. But first, Sherry, people, when we have a guest for the first time, people listening enjoy learning from you something about yourself. I've kind of told your life story in a tidbit, but tell us a little bit from your perspective how it's been.
Well, that's pretty wide open range. But I've got lots of answers now. I guess if I go starting at the beginning, not the beginning of my life, but the beginning of my thinking, is that I understood somehow early that I only had this one life. We all know that, but I really felt it. I only had this one life, and it's really important. It was when I was in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, and now my 60s, that every day be just as good as it can be, and that I can be just as good as I can be. I can live it just as well as I can, not to be for myself to be perfect, but to have life just be as good as it can be, because you only get one chance at it. Right. And I wanted everything that life has to offer. I wanted to I had these babies, and I wanted to have a beautiful body at the same time. And like that, you could have it both. I wanted to be at home with my children and still have an income without a ceiling. I wanted to be educated. I wanted to travel. I just wanted just everything. And I needed to find a way to do it. And that's my life journey right there, how to do it, how to have it all. And what I needed to become to have it all, and sought that out. And now it's in Life Mastery, the book.
It really is all in the book. But you really were just figuring it out as you went along. You were doing a lot of reading, though. You were reading other self-help books. Did that help you much?
Oh, absolutely. I constantly, and Ken too, he felt, once we got married, nobody would have given us 2 cents for our future. Like, we just were broke. Yeah. We had nothing. We had no education. We were going nowhere. But we both had the same feeling that we had great things to do, and we wanted great things. So we started by reading the books, listening to audio programs, and we just did it as much as we could. We still had to make a living and take care of those kids, but we went to seminars and listened to great speakers, and we'd dig up the money to go listen to Zig Ziglar or whoever it was. And so I was seeking out the truth on how to do this. The problem that I came across, Roberta, was that I could get highly motivated, and those people really made a difference in my life, and I don't want to demean it in any way. The Zig Ziglars, the Jim Rohns, the Earl Nightingales, those people, even Napoleon Hill, he was dead before I got around to it. But they didn't give me a how. I would be so frustrated. I'd say, okay, I'm motivated. I think I can pretty much figure out what it is that I want to do, because I know what I want. But I was seeking out the how. Give me something to do. And I feel like that was the hardest part to find. And I made sure that I provided that. Hopefully it's easy to understand the how to do it, how to actually implement the plans, the goals that I wanted. That was the trickier part to find.
And so, well, that's interesting. So they said this is what we are aspiring to. This is the kind of life you should be living. But they didn't say, there you are living in a tenement and you don't have any money. Here's how you get from where you are to where, which strikes you right. I mean, that's not very helpful, really, because the how is the important part.
Yes, how's where the rubber meets the roads. And you said earlier about the nuts and, I think something about the basics or the nuts and bolts of of my book, of my basic approach, and that is it. Here's the nuts and bolts on how you do it. It's great to be motivated. We need that. We need a little direction on to make sure that we're growing in a well-rounded way, so that we don't lose too much when things get out of balance. Like, we don't pursue our dream business at the expense of our relationships, like that. So we need to have that balance. But how is tricky.
He must have been like you. He must have also been trying to grow and change and be successful.
Yes, it started. Married.
Talking. He sounds like such a wonderful guy.
He's a wonderful guy. He is, and on everything that I teach, he knows it as well as I do. He could have written the book, or he could teach the seminars, or he could do the coaching, but he does do some coaching with business and some things like that. But he's happy to stand back and watch me soar, and he knows it all as well as I do.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And you truly did meet when you were both hippies without any sort of living because I remember the culture. I'm actually a little older than you are. I very well remember the hippie culture, and nobody gave 2 cents for the future of any of those people that were going around sticking flowers in the muzzles of guns and stuff like that, and living, I don't understand how we thought that was a good way to live, but we did at the time. And I don't see how you got beyond it. You just decided, we're going to get serious now?
Yes. So you talked about my marriage, and that marriage probably was the crux of it. I'd watched my parents' marriages. I never saw a good marriage, just certainly not any of my mother's 5, my father's 4, were not good marriages. And I didn't want to get married. But I had the child, and I loved her so much, and I really wanted to give her stability, and I thought I really need to get married, and I met Ken. And when we got married, I thought, by darn, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have the very best marriage possible. Well, I couldn't keep living that same lifestyle, and I had a little bit of an alcohol problem at that point.
Not everything else.
So yes, right. So I just quit. We both of us said we knew. We fought constantly when we were dating. When we got married, we hardly ever have since. But that was the alcohol and the drugs and the lifestyle. And we could see really clearly we can't live like that and be happy together. And we figured that out like real quick, like a few months before we got married. And so by the time we got married, I'd quit drinking. Ken quit drinking a couple months later. And we sought out a spiritual life and, of course, a financial life. We started to try to put the things together. And we completely left that. We friends, everything. We just completely walked away from that lifestyle. We had met because we both ran out of money in the same town. And we were both, there was travel trailer factories were hiring young people by the droves in those days. And that's where we met, a place like that. So that's how we met. But then we started to build it. And it was the marriage that was the beginning of saying, I want the best there is.
Yes. Yeah, they say, study after study shows that if you want to have a good life, you finish high school at least, get married, and have children, only in that order. And just that, all by itself, seems to more than double people's chances of success. And so you did that basic thing. That was good. But you then went on and did so much more. One of the things I admire about you is that you saw life as needing to be well-rounded, well-spiked. Every part of your life you tried to make as good as it could be. Most of us, all of us, I think, tend to think, well, I'm going to stress the spiritual, or I'm going to stress the financial, or I'm going to get a great body and work out a lot. But without thinking that the other areas are just as important, and they really are. Here's my own example. I've never been to a gym. I've never cared about exercising or caring what I eat. I mean, I'm too busy working, right? I mean, very, very important to work. But when COVID made us stay home, the only way I could get out of the house was to take a walk. Now I walk just before dawn every day, and I wouldn't be without it. It's amazing how much more energy you get just from taking a half-hour walk. It's incredible.
Yes. Taking care of your body. This body is the instrument through which we work and we love and we think is our instrument, right? And if it's not